Hello everyone and welcome to Blockchain Game with Upbeats and our weekly roundup. Today is Friday the 24th of November and I'm your host Jenny Jordan and with me is co-host John Jordan. Hello John.
Hello.
First things first, I'm going to jump into top 50 and then I'm going to ask who you've got there with you. We have launched the top 50 blockchain gaming company awards, which you can join in and have your say. Go to our website or our Twitter and you'll find links to go through to the form where you can nominate your favorite company that you think have had a good impact on the blockchain Web3 gaming space in 2023. That said, who have you got there, John? And why have you got that funny thing on your head?
Oh, I've got that on my head. Well, you always have things on your head, so I thought I'd get in the action. No, so it's a specific thing today. So this is actually a very limited edition Axie that I got. I think 2021, a long time ago, 2020 even, I can't remember. So I got this when I was in Singapore doing a conference, and Jeff from Axie was there, and he was giving some away. So I've managed to keep this from the grubby hands of our children, and I keep it safe because this is a limited edition one. But the reason I have it today is because Axie is launching its merch store. So that's the first time they've done like a physical. They've done obviously merch in the past, but this is the first time they've done a store where you can go in and buy stuff. So you can't actually buy one of these because this is quite a complicated, as you can see, quite a complicated structural plushie.
That's an OG one.
This is an OG one. You probably can't see. I actually did have to sew it up. So at the top, it's actually repaired by me with my fantastic sewing skills. Anyway,
it's even more unique and rare.
Even more, yeah. So there is a plushie though. It's not quite as complex as that one, but there is the first plushie. They got a set of what do you call it? Apparel. So there's a t-shirt, which is actually quite nice. There's a hoodie and a hat and. They're a very limited edition. They're all going to sell out, I imagine, pretty quick. But they're from when the game first came out, and didn't actually have any artwork. It just had code, so it's called the code edition. So they're actually not very colourful. They're sort of just black and white. So they're not sort of what you might expect from Axie, which is now a very colourful sort of IP. But this is, I guess, the OG thing. They are doing some figurines as well. There's some special figurines for Mystic Axie holders, so they can. Buy these actually quite expensive $250 sort of figurine things, and you also get an NFT in the game, and there's a whole bunch of that sort of mixture of sort of digital physical stuff, and there's giveaways if you buy using the Ronin wallet and blah blah blah, all the usual sort of stuff. But it's a sort of a one-off experiment, I guess. And we're seeing lots of other people do merch. So actually, we'll talk about them a bit later on.
Yeah, I was going to say that. You see that more and more now, don't you? Mm.
Yeah, Find Satoshi Lab. The STEPN people just did that was a very small drop. I think it was just like 500 t-shirts that they were doing. But clearly, as some of these blockchain crypto brands feel like they're getting sort of market share and certainly have sort of OGs, and maybe the sentiments back a little bit. Obviously, these decisions would have been made six months ago for this sort of stuff, but people are getting more into that. Obviously, we've had loads of Bored Ape stuff, and some of those NFT projects, and DAUWs have done their crossover with Crocs, so you get these Crocs shoes and blah blah, all that sort of stuff. So all good.
Cool caps.
And caps, so your ultra cap, your nice that ultra cap, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice. Yes, and. It was this week, I think, that Ultra upgraded their the client to now working on Electron.
Yeah, not a massive change really, I guess. But it's just as much as I understand it. So Electron is like an open source way of building kind of client interfaces, and it just looks much more like a native app. The other one looked a bit more like a sort of embedded website, where it's opening tabs all the time, which seemed a little bit odd. But this is more for the future. So they can just move quicker and upgrade it more, and it's just it's a bit nicer to use. So that's enough for you to wear your hat.
Right, so there's some news from the week as well. So you have been speaking to, you just mentioned it, Find Satoshi Lab, about STEPN and Gas Hero and where they're going in 2024, and let's go through with them. We have been writing quite a bit about pixels, still gaining loads of traction since they're launched on Ronin about 3 weeks back now, I think. They did exceed 100,000 daily active users wallets this week, and the CEO says maybe about 40% of that is bots. He doesn't think that's sort of anything you should shy away from talking about. They have put some measures in place to sort of deal with the issue of bots, but also he also says quite edgy, really, that if your game doesn't have bots, it just means that no one's bothered with your game, basically. And in other Pixel news, there's been the announcement of a Mochaverse integration in the game, which is going to be basically like mini games in a designated Mocha clubhouse where Mochaverse NFT holders can play with special avatars and get special rewards and round points, and more to come about that. But it's supposed to be launching sometime next week. And in more Mochaverse news, Ubisoft has Mochaverse and Ubisoft have announced that they're going to integrate the Champions Tactics Grimoria Chronicles. I always struggle. That's such a long game title. Going to be integrated in the Mochaverse ecosystem. We have some Dogami news, which we'll talk about. We got some block launch news. We got some investments, Saga and Matrix Fire. So loads to go through, but let's start with STEPN. Well, so let's start with Find Satoshi Lab that you were interviewing.
Episode 147 of Blockchain Gaming World podcast. Spoke to their CEO. Maybe this is more sort of my oversight than other people. STEPN was a really big thing. It's moved to own game, and it sort of Axie Infinity came out and was really big, and then sort of died away, and then sort of the next big thing it was that sort of millions of players was STEPN, and it was sort of just when it was sort of early 2022, so just when sort of the market had peaked and was starting to sort of implode or deflate, I suppose. So it's a really weird timing on that. I remember looking at the STEPN token, the GMT token, and everything else was just like absolutely getting hammered. And because STEPN had come out sort of slightly later and was on a different trajectory, it actually didn't get hammered. I mean, it didn't go down. It didn't go up. It just didn't go down as much as the other thing. So it was sort of interesting. And it was one where people sort of again made money on buying NFTs expensively and then sort of breeding NFTs out and selling them. And there was all that sort of hype. So, but I think maybe because it's on Solana and it was not, it's not really a game as we would understand a game. It's called Move to Earn. So you basically have to own an NFT and then you walk around and you sort of earn points and tokens in there. But it has sort of survived as a project. It's gone from Solana to BNB and Ethereum. It was one of the first games to use Apple Apple Pay to buying NFTs as in-app purchase. So they've been quite innovative just in that product. And then they've got their own DEX and their own marketplace on Solana and I think on Ethereum as well now. And then they've got this new game coming out, which is really why I wanted to talk to them, which is called Gas Hero. And Gas Hero is very different. It's it is a mobile game. It is what they call a social mobile game. So very focused around guilds and that sort of stuff. It's running on Polygon, which is obviously different to running on Solana. Just to sort of get a feeling of sort of what it was like to be in that company during the boom times. Obviously, pretty scary, exciting. In the crash times, obviously, pretty not so exciting, pretty scary. And then very much this sort of very similar to Sky Mavis with this sort of you have a big success, you have a sort of then it sort of crashes down to earth, which is neither of them is sort of your fault or to do with anything you've done. It's just sort of market forces. As she said, but then sort of building. It's a cliche now, but building through the bear. And both, Sky Mavis has done a lot with obviously Ronin, and now we're going to talk a bit about one of the successful games on the Ronin blockchain. And I think with Find Satoshi, they've just built a lot of them, not built their own blockchain, but they built a lot of sort of their own infrastructure. So they've got their own sort of DEX, they've got their own market, the NFT marketplace. You can mint stuff in there. They've got this AI thing. If you want to mint your own collection, you can just basically hit a button and it'll create NFTs. I mean, quite well no one will do that, but they've just built a lot of stuff. And so I guess what's interesting is with Gas Hero, which is actually out in December, that's much more like a traditional game. So it'll be interesting to see what they can get through the app stores in terms of blockchain, and just two, they have quite a big community, which is sort of focused sort of around crypto and sort of fitness, I suppose. And how's that going to excuse me, and how's it going to sort of come across into sort of more traditional game? So yeah, it was interesting from that point of view.
Now, I just wanted to pick up on something you said there about so STEPN's on Solana and Gas Heroes on Polygon, and what came through in the interview, that's because they want to reach like a wider audience, basically reach different, and is that really kind of how it works? Even though, you know, Web3 gaming, let's be honest, it's not got a vast amount of enthusiasts or players. So the few that are actually into it, are they really niched onto a specific chain? Would they stay just with games on a particular chain and not be happy to sort of play a game that's launching on a different one? So you have to actually launch on a different chain if you want to reach new players, if you know what I mean. And what's the kind of practical difference in sort of launching on a different chain, if you know practically?
Yeah, I mean, the tribalism stuff, I think, is there. I mean, it's sort of one of these sort of things that you know, anyone can create a wallet on any, you know, chain. You know, it doesn't cost any money to create a wallet, but I think people just tend to find they gravitate more to, you know, it's just in terms of almost like mental friction. You know, I'm very much on the Ethereum EVM side, so you know, that's all the Ethereum, Polygon, you know, all those you know, Avalanche. You can all use MetaMask for all those sort of you know, to operate with all those blockchains. You know, now you can actually use with MetaMask, MetaMask Snap. You can actually do Solana as well through your MetaMask. I mean, that's a fairly new thing. And the same thing with, you know, when Solana started out, you didn't have to, but the MetaMask equivalent was called or is called Phantom. But now you can also do Phantom Ethereum through Phantom. So it's sort of better than it was. But I think there is this definite sort of EVM Ethereum sort of crowd, maybe more on the developer side, and then there is this very different sort of Solana type crowd, because obviously Solana is not an EVM compatible blockchain, so it just means it's, from a coding point of view, you can't run the Solidity code from Ethereum on Solana. The blockchain works totally differently as well, and definitely Solana was you know, there was a certain crowd around that who were sort of different, and it was partly due to do with, obviously, the token went through the roof, and that was partly to do with, you know, FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried being, you know, the sort of cheerleader of all that, and you know, so, you know, I think maybe, you know, whether there were people who were, you know, said, I'm not going to play this game because it's on Solana, you know, probably not, but I think there is, you know, generally a broader sort of gaming sort of audience on the EVM side. So, I mean, I think with all these things, we'll see how they actually deploy the game. You know, you probably won't be logging in through MetaMask, I wouldn't think. Maybe you will be, but yeah, I think probably.
We'll see in the future. You know, so looking at Pixels then, who actually moved from Polygon to Ronin, and seems to have quite a boost.
There's just a lot of movement, isn't there, from change? I mean, we'll maybe talk about now. You know, Dogami, which is like the biggest game or the most high-profile game on Tezos, which again another non-EVM chain is now sort of migrating or allowing people to migrate to Polygon. You know, they'll say the same reasons. They'll sort of say, well, there's an audience there on Polygon, and certainly you would definitely say Tezos is pretty niche. You know, so some people really love Tezos. You know, but there's no games on Tezos, and you know, people can't be bothered to. I think, you know, if you're not into Tezos, you're not going to create a Tezos wallet and get into that and move tokens around. So certainly for Dogami, moving to Polygon sort of absolutely makes sense. So anyway, but yeah, Pixels. So Pixels has sort of been the sort of ongoing story of the last 2 weeks, isn't it? Sort of, it's you know, it's a nice story in the sense that it's doing really well, but also there's sort of nuances coming out every day. Sort of new facts or new sort of the CEO seems very talkative on Twitter about things, doesn't he? Which is good to see. I mean, it seems very open.
Yeah.
So,
I think in many ways the Web3 sort of, they're just like breathing Web3 approaches, and they're not sort of, you know, they don't seem to turn to kind of established media or anything. They just do everything through Twitter and their community, and kind of really working closely with the people that actually care about the project, rather than sort of, do you know what I mean?
Yep. So I guess a brief overview. So yeah, as you say, Pixels has been around for a while. I think, you know, a year or so. I think the project's been going definitely for more than a year, because I bought an NFT over a year ago. But anyway, so it's sort of a social a social RPG sort of MMORPG, I guess. It's not really it has a gaming elements like farming elements and that sort of stuff. So I guess from that point of view, it is a game, but it's very sort of social. It's very lo-fi graphics. It is, as it says, pixels. So it's very sort of pixelated characters. Back in the day, it was one of these first ones to actually go, we're going to be very interoperable in the sense that we're going to have lots of characters from other NFT projects. So like Bored Apes and all the sort of blue chip NFTs, it sort of supported them sort of graphically, that you could have those little sort of characters in the game. They were tiny little pixelated characters. So in some ways it was sort of charming. But anyway, didn't really. I think did okay on Polygon. I think they sort of said they were one of the biggest games on Polygon, but that doesn't mean very much, really, at the moment. And then they were one of the. I guess they probably were the biggest game to move to Ronin, in the sense they've been around for a while, and Ronin being Sky Mavis's own blockchain that it uses to run Axie Infinity. So it is EVM compatible, and the whole thing about Ronin was there's loads of people have used it to play Axie. It's actually not many people were using it at the time, so it had about 20,000 daily active unique wallets across everything on Ronin. So that's DeFi stuff, playing games, what have you, marketplaces. So Ronin sort of hadn't really proven itself as a sort of blockchain. It sort of had the sort of past glories of Axie Infinity, but it wasn't very clear how it was going to compete with other things. And Pixels came on and just sort of in the first sort of week just blew it out. So it did, I think the first weekend it did 60,000 daily active unique wallets, and so that took Ronin to like 80,000. Because obviously it's just additional to what Ronin had sort of running under the surface. And then it dropped down again. So at one point it went down to under 10,000, and it was sort of, I was sort of writing, well, this is a bit of just a launch bubble. And then every day I check it, and then it shot up again to over, this time even higher. It went over, I think it peaked at over 115,000 daily active unique wallets on Pixels, over 140,000 on Ronin. Then it came down a little bit, and now it's gone up again. so it keeps going up. But there has been this sort of issue around bots, and we always know for any sort of game that is being successful and you're able to extract sort of value from it. Then obviously people are looking to see, can I basically extract more value out of it than it cost me to put in. So that's very blockchain. And the CEO basically said, it's quite open, and people were complaining. I think there were these coupons you could get to create pets that they were giving away, and people were complaining that bots were getting them, and so the CEO sort of did this big long article on X, and basically said, as you rightly pointed out, he says if your game's successful, you're going to have bots on it, and we think about 40% of our audience is bots at the moment, and these are the loads of measures we're doing to sort of not necessarily mitigate bots, because I think bots in and of themselves don't have to be a problem. Obviously, if they're extracting value that you want to go to real players, then that is a problem. So putting things in place. So they have this VIP pass, which is a subscription pass. You can just pay for a month, or you can pay for a year up front. Costs about $10 a month. Different ways of paying. So that's the way.
That's over like coming up towards 11 or 12,000.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing.
Bad,
Yeah, so that grew very quickly from 5,000 to, I think, just under 12,000 was the last figures we've seen. But that's about a week ago. So that nominally that's over $1 million of revenue a year if they manage to sustain that, and that's. You can pay that in crypto, but that's basically not really for crypto rewards. That's basically for in-game progression, rewards and status and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was saying basically, if bot accounts want to pay that to get those rewards, then sort of good on them. Which is a sort of mentality we've sort of seen before with Splinterlands when it changed its reward structure to reward sort of players who are being more active and having better cards. Again, when I spoke to Jesse over there, he's saying, if bot owners want to spend a lot of money buying cards to level up their accounts to win more things, then that's sort of fine. So it's more, and because we're going to see with as AI becomes increasingly familiar in all parts of the internet, it doesn't really matter if it's a bot player or a human player. It's sort of how much money can you get it to sort of pay into your game. So, but anyway, Pixels is and I think the other thing is it's the sentiment is sort of nice as well as we're coming out. As crypto prices are sort of going up and looking sort of fairly stable. In the game sector, we sort of want to see successful games, and this game's sort of coming from nothing to do 100,000. That's actually pretty big. That would, I mean, probably I'll look at the figures at the end of the month, but that will make it probably certainly in the top 3, I would think, games by traffic.
Yeah,
we'll see how it sustains, obviously. But it's obviously good. Obviously it's a solid team who sort of know what they're doing. It's really good for Ronin to prove that they can take existing games and there is an audience there who are prepared to play games. So it positions them well as a gaming blockchain. They sort of now call themselves the king of the gaming blockchains, which I don't like, but maybe what do I know? They've got a lot of games coming out anyway, so it's sort of, and it just I think it's just good for the sector to have feel good stories from that point of view.
We've already mentioned the Mochaverse integration with Pixels. It's basically going to be a Mocha clubhouse, and Mochaverse is also announced this week collaboration with Ubisoft. But I thought when you said like one of these big games, you've been playing a big game as well this week, game of the week, 9 Chronicles, that's launched on mobile. What are your first thoughts on that?
Don't know if it is a big game. We've covered this in the past. It's been out for years. I've played it quite a lot. 2020, 2021. There's a PC game. I always thought it should have been a mobile game. It now is a mobile game. It's actually more complicated than that because basically it is now. They have 2 basic builds of the game. So they actually sort of forked the old version of the game. It's still available, and you can play that version of the game on mobile or PC. And you can play the new version of the game, which they called M, even though everything's available on mobile, confusingly. That has a new blockchain. So it's basically forked the blockchain, and it's sort of 2 separate versions of the game. And so I started playing it on mobile. It is hard to see in terms of UI on a mobile screen because there is lots of little things to tap on. It's a South Korean developer, Planetarium. It's a very South Korean or sort of Asian sort of idle RPG. So you don't really play the game in terms of the characters just do automatically what they're going to do. They're just battling through 2D side-scrolling levels, and it's all about the meta. So you're sort of, every time you do something, you're earning different resources. Then you combine those resources to recipes, and you can build new gear, level up gear, break down your gear, summon new things. There's typical complicated gearing system. There's runes. There is a PvP arena. There's a world boss thing. There's just loads and loads of. I mean, I will get to the bottom of it. So I started playing it on my mobile and found it a bit difficult, and there were some things you couldn't really access, like some of the blockchain stuff. And I should point out everything that happens. It's sort of it's not quite a fully on. It's not like quite a fully on-chain game because not all the resources are blockchain items. But basically, everything you do in the game, every game action is a blockchain transaction. So it is quite crazy that they got this through the app stores, I think. But it's just it is sort of like a fully on-chain game. But then I fiddle around a lot because I wanted to play it on PC because it's easy to do screen grabs and videos and stuff when it's on PC. And it took me a long time, and I had to delete accounts and fiddle around with private keys. It's very complicated from that point of view. But I got it to work, and then I got really into it. And then I found a whole bunch of other blockchain stuff where you can stake PFP characters and then take those PFP characters into the game. And there's a whole bunch of liquidity pool stuff. And just load. It's just sort of the ideal game for me, which doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be popular. It probably means it's not going to be popular with other people. But I found it fascinating and enjoyable, and great.
And we have also had 2 investments this week. One was into the Layer 1 blockchain Saga, a seed extension round of 5 million. You know more about Saga than I do. What games? Are there any prominent games building on there?
I mean, it's interesting actually. Yeah, so they increasingly they don't call themselves a gaming blockchain, but increasingly you can see in their sort of marketing that they are very much more focused on games. It's not anything. It's not anything I've sort of seen. Sort of that we games that we know of moving to that chain, or sort of big. Or big companies saying we're going to use Saga. So I think it's more on the smaller side. And they said they've got 300 developers doing stuff. I think that's more on the smaller side, and we'll sort of wait to see quite the quality of them when the mainnet goes live next year. But from a tech point of view, they're quite interesting. So they're sort of ex-Cosmos people, so they're very much into cross-chain, multi-chain sort of thing. So you can sort of spin up your own chains. They're called chainlets, and you can sort of have as many of those as you want, which is very much like an L2 sort of thing. But you can sort of combine them with other blockchains. So they're doing stuff with Polygon and Come to Us's XPlay and other things. So we'll sort of see exactly how it plays out. But it's probably, I think, less of a sort of like an L1. It will end up probably less of a sort of a big L1 than more like this sort of interesting interoperability sort of system. So it seems to be, as much as I understand it, quite highly regarded on the tech side. I guess with all these blockchains, sort of how much sort of it's almost like developer mindshare it gets. But yeah, and the other thing was interesting there is they raised from Placeholder Capital, who are pretty well known. Investor into infrastructure and stuff. So that was quite a less than the money. I think the sort of stamp of approval from Placeholder was probably in the industry seen as quite a strong thing.
Mm-hmm. The other investment, lesser known investors in that one, it's this Singapore-based mobile game studio building Web3 games. The first one is Matrix Fire. It's a first-person shooter. They raised 10 million in a second Series A round. So on top of the previous 10 million they raised, so it's a total of 20 million at the time. So that was co-led by Folius Venture and 7X. Find Satoshi Lab was in there too. Jambo Initiative Capital. Can you tell us anything about that?
So I mean, 20 million. I mean, it's obviously pretty decent in the current sort of market. So they announced 10 million in September last year, 10 million now. So the game actually, as you say, Matrix Fire is a sort of 5x5 shooter. Looks actually, I've not played it, but looks from the videos, pretty sort of high quality, mobile shooter. Obviously, lots of successful products in that genre. I'm not sure if that's sort of quite the blockchain integration in there. But then what did feel very 2000 sort of peak 2022 was that they go, we've got two other games. So we've got, I can't remember, Matrix Evolution and Matrix something else, and it's not very clear to me in the there's a long white paper. It's not very clear what those games are and how they're specced out. One of them suddenly is a sort of big sort of city-based thing, much more, and one goes into space. So I think at that point you can't make three games like that on $20 million. So that's obviously stretch goals. I wouldn't necessarily talk about those if I was that company. And the team is not doxed, so that's always a massive no-no for me. It just sort of says, we worked in games for 10 years, sort of, and obviously they've raised the money from, I wouldn't say sort of fairly credible investors, who sort of know the space. They're not, I wouldn't say they're top range investors. They're very Asian focused, but they're not. You kind of think they're not people who would just be taken in by scam. So obviously they must know who the people are who would invest the money. But that sort of worries me a little bit. And then they have some NFTs live at the moment, which is not very sort of clear quite what they're there for. And the prices of them, like one series was like over 3 ETH floor, and the other one over 14 ETH floor, which is just like
14 ETH.
Yeah, so that is not that is not for an sort of unheard of game. That is not credible from a pricing point of view. I mean, there's Bored Apes are 26, Doodles are 2, an unheard of game. It just means there's no liquidity in the market. So it basically means they're holding on to all the NFTs and not selling them, or they're selling them amongst themselves.
Wow.
So a few. I'm not saying this is a scam project, by the way, but for me, they're just looking at it. There are a few sort of red flags that I would want to know a bit more about the team before sort of saying this is going to be a sort of credible project. But as I say, the game, from what I've seen, the game's not available, but the videos they've out there look good, and I guess we will see. The other thing as well, I think mobile shooter games is a very competitive market. So whether you're in blockchain or not, it's just very hard. There's some very big names out there that you're competing with. I'm not sort of sure that would be the genre I would myself pick to go with. But we will see. They've got the money to at least prove us wrong.
This week was also the Autonomous World Summit in Istanbul.
This week or last week?
Pardon?
Was it this week or last week?
I think I'm not sure actually. I think they seem to have come back home this week, all full of COVID and the usual conference bugs. But they all seem very passionate about the industry, all very bullish, as you would be in kind of a niched, still niched, I suppose, industry like that. Although it is good to see, you know, these studios keep on building. And Lattice's Skystrife, we've looked into a bit, that is going to launch the season 0 on the 27th of November. So dive into that. Primordium is another fairly anticipated fully on-chain game. Obviously, you got Downstream by Playmint. Loads of exciting things. I can go on and on and on. But we're going to finish off now. Make sure you check out all of our stories on blockchaingamer.biz. Follow us on Twitter, X, BCGBiz, and you can find us on LinkedIn. And have a good Thanksgiving weekend to all of you who celebrate. And we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.